Let's talk about project data. The project is the mechanism Facil uses to group together all the work that's been done, all the reservations, the facility, equipment, resources, so that we know what it was for. And generally, we're talking about producing programs, so the project represents all those programs that fit together. You could think of it as a series, but a project can also just be a single program. As I mentioned earlier, a project can also not have anything to do with programming. It may be a training project or a community outreach project or something other than production. But whatever it is, the project is the grouping of all of that work, all those reservations. And when you're producing programs, of course, it groups the programs as well. Let's look at the project form. It has 3 tabs: the basic project data that we're looking at now, and then a list of programs, and then the expenditures. Let's look at what the different data fields are for a project. Of course, there is a unique title for every project, and we've been looking at the list of project titles when we were selecting the projects. There is a status. There is a budget, and that budget can be set to whatever you want and then compared to the expenditures so that you have a goal in mind of what the limit should be. Again, a mechanism for balancing the consumption of resources. Funding, representing how the project is being funded or paid for. If you're doing that, again, your own definitions, your own choices. 3 dates: start, the planned end date, and the close or actual end date of the project. When you first create the project, you're going to want to have a start date and a planned end date. When the project is finished and no more work is to be done, you'll enter that close date. If the project is affiliated with an organization, you would choose the organization from the list of organizations that you've established and enter that right here. The producer, you can pick anyone from your list of persons, and we also have a second person that we call the co-producer, just to allow you to associate more than one. Again, whenever you select someone from the list of people, if there are any notices relating to that person, you'll see them at that time. In addition to showing all the data here for the producer and co-producer, if we move over to the right, we'll see other project data. There's a staff member from your staff. That's the person who's sort of supervising or managing the project. A checkbox to indicate whether the project is supposed to be a series, in other words, a regularly repeating program. And also how many programs are planned in the project. This is not a limitation. It doesn't keep you from entering programs or limit the number. It's just another descriptor of the project. We expect this to be a 12-program series or 24 or 52. Very important here, we have 2 choices of how we're going to charge resource and facility consumption: against the person's allocation, or against the organization's allocation, or any combination. For example, a person may be working on a project as a volunteer, just offering to do it, when they actually are just helping out, and we would not want to charge their allocation for that project. On the other hand, if the organization doesn't have an allocation, you may not want to charge it. Any combination you want. It can be charged against both, either one, or neither one. Down here, we have 3 text boxes. Starting on the left, we have the description of the project. And the important thing to know here is that that is the description that's used in the schedule reports. So when you print your schedule of programming, this brief description is what you'll see if you choose to include a description in your schedule. The notes are just for internal use. You can put anything you want in there to remind you of different things about the project. And finally, all the way over on the right, we have the notice text. And again, this is just like the notice for the member. If you put something in here, it will pop up automatically every time you use this project in a reservation, or set programming for this project, or add it to the schedule. Whatever special notice you put in here will pop up every time you do anything related to this project, so you don't have to go back and look at the form. Now, very important concept, we have a whole group of fields here that we call the program defaults. Now, because we're generally using a project to collate a group of programs that are being produced, by setting these program defaults, we describe both the project and the individual programs. Whatever choices are made here in program defaults automatically carry over to the programs for this project. Then they can be changed. That's why they're defaults. They're the assumed or typical or normal values for each of these items in a program. Let's look at what they are. Subject of the programs in this project. Again, you define your own set of choices here. The expected length of programs in the project. Normal length here is going to be 30 minutes, 0 seconds. What type of production is it? Again, your choices. Over to the right, there are 3 checkboxes: variable length, adult content, and filler. These are flags to let you know, again, more about each program. If the program is variable length, what we mean is that you can choose to show any part of it at any length. Typically, this would be something like a schedule crawl or a weather graphic or a slideshow. Something that you would be using that you could show 1 minute of, 5 minutes of, let it run indefinitely. By checking variable length, the scheduling mechanism then knows that you're allowed to schedule that program for any period of time. Okay, adult content, obviously that's a flag that we use so that we don't accidentally schedule adult content at the wrong time of day. Filler, this simply designates the type of programming that can be used over and over and over again to fill spaces in your schedule. It could be promo material or anything that is not too time sensitive, and usually it's quite short, so that you can show it over and over again. Okay, finally, we have fields for the origin of the program. In other words, where did the program originate? Was it internal? Was it shared with some other organization? Is it public domain? Again, defining your own set of choices there. Who owns the copyright of the program? Is it the producer? Is it owned by your organization? And very important, what is the signal source of the program? Because in the new technologies, there are a lot of ways of producing video programming. While most of the programming you do may be on tape, you may also have satellite feed programming, you may have computer-generated programming, you may have programming that's coming from digital servers. You can define any number of different signal sources to tell us how this program is produced and how it's going to be played back. So all of these choices in the box labeled Program Defaults, and each of these will automatically be applied to every program that we add to this project. Then take the length, for example, default of 30 minutes, and as each program is completed, you would adjust it to show 29:30, 29:50, whatever the final finished length of each program is. The subject may change from one program to another in a series. Even the production type might change. But by establishing these defaults, we both describe the project, because this tells us a lot more about the nature of the programs. So it describes the project, and at the same time, it reduces the data entry when you go to enter programs. If you are going to be entering, say, 52 weekly programs in a series, this has saved you an enormous amount of data entry by setting these defaults before you enter the programs. What else is on the project form? Well, there's at the top, again, the tab buttons. Lets us go to a program list and to expenditures. Let's jump over program. Let's look at expenditure first. We made some changes, so it's asking us to save them. Again, this is just like the expenditure form on the person record. It's just like the expenditure form on the organization record. In this case, of course, it's showing us the total expenditures for the project. Again, you can set it to any date range you want, and you see the totals here. A little more detail at the bottom, because we have a budget set for this project. We see the calculation of budget minus the current expenditure total and showing us the balance. And then the Programs tab shows us all the programs that have been either finished or planned for this project. If we start at the top, it tells us there are 15 programs. We have received 7. In other words, they've been turned in and are ready for showing. 7 of them are available, because a program may have been turned in and then something else might happen that changes its status. It could be damaged. It could be returned to the producer. So there's a distinction between finished and available. In this case, they're the same. And then we're also tracking when future programs are due. So we know, in this case, for example, 2 programs are past due. Let's look at the data for each program. Now, I should emphasize right now, this is not all of the information about the program. This is an abbreviated list that we're seeing to show all the programs in a project a little more easily, and it's showing the title, status, date due, in other words, the date it was expected to be completed, the date it was actually received, or the date or actually completed, the finished length, and an episode number. And these episode numbers, of course, if you want to, you can define them yourself, or there's an automated mechanism for just numbering them sequentially. Now, you'll notice something about titles. The project title is Reading is Fundamental. And again, by default, whenever you create a new program, the project title is the title of the program as well. And in many cases, that may be all you want. Or you may choose to do what we've done here, which is to have the project title and then a little subtitle or episode title. Or, third choice, you can simply ignore the project title and every episode has its own unique title. The important thing to know is that it's the program title that appears in the schedule. So if you want to see both the project and episode titles, you need to put the whole thing in here, and that's what will show in the schedule. If it's completely different from the project name, that's fine too. That's what will show in the schedule. If we scroll the list down, we see that here, as we get into the later episodes, are programs that were due but have not yet been received, and therefore it's showing us here in red that the program is in fact past due. On the project form, we also have a summary report capability. Let's look at the form again. In the upper right corner of the form is our button to print a summary report of this project. You saw this on the person form. It's going to give us all the information on this tab, the project tab, on the program list tab, and on the expenditure tab, and put that all in a formatted report for us. So we no longer have to try to print the screen in order to capture this information. I'll just click the button. There's a very simple dialog here because you can choose to include the program information, which would be the list from this tab, the expenditure information, which of course is this tab. Now the first tab, the project data, that's always included by default. Again, you get to choose a date range for expenditure if you want to change that. And here's what the report looks like, the project summary report. And you can see that this first section is a duplicate of the form. It's laid out the same way. Reading is fundamental, and all the information, the checkboxes, everything the way it is on the form. If I scroll down, we'll see the program list, again, laid out the way it is on the form. This list is fairly long. You'll notice programs that are overdue, highlighted in red, everything the way it is on the form. And at the end of the report, we have the expenditures. Move to the next page, scroll back up, and there's the third tab, the expenditures. So it looks exactly the way the 3 tabs on the form do. You can choose to include or exclude the programs and expenditure tabs, and you can choose the date. So that's the explanation of the summary report. It's very simple. The project form allows us to keep track of what's going on in every project, including the anticipated program. So it's a progress tracking system too. Let's look at how we can do that. If we go to the form and go to the list of programs, now here's a project that only has 1 program listed. There is a button on the right called Add Planned Programs. And this is where we can set up the expected production for the project. How many programs we expect to be produced, when they're supposed to be done, and so on. And by doing this in a simple automated way, we establish a little project tracking mechanism. We'll click Add Planned Programs. We get a simple form here that tells us what episode number we're going to start with. And then it lets us select a set of due dates. And by selecting a set of due dates, we can tell it we expect to have a program produced, say, every other week for a certain period of time. The Set Due Dates button gives us a little form, and we won't go into too much detail about this right now because we'll be using this again later. I'm just going to quickly set it to say that I want to start at the end of this month, and I expect a program every 2 weeks on Tuesday, and there will be 10 programs produced. So I'm saying starting on the 31st, every other Tuesday for 10 repetitions. Set dates, it tells me 10 due dates are selected, and now I simply click Save the Programs, and it creates the list for me, starting with episode 1, as we indicated, episode 1, 2, 3, through 10, and you can see the date sequence every other Wednesday. The title defaulting to Bob's Project. All the other information about the program defaults to the settings that we established in the project definition. If I go and look at one of these individual program records now on the program form, which we haven't actually seen before, here's all the detail that we can continue to fill in. So that was a quick way of establishing a list of programs. And now as the timing goes by for these dates, they will indicate as due or past due if they have not been received. So a simple mechanism for creating the expected schedule of programming and then tracking each one as it comes in by simply indicating the receive date and the finish length. If you needed to change the title at that point or anything else, you would do so. So we have all the planned programs. We know exactly where we are in the status of this project. We can also choose to add single program at a time, and if you are adding these records as you actually receive the programs, you would probably do it that way. When someone comes in with a tape and you're adding the program record for the first time, you would click Add New Program. It takes you to the program form, and you can fill all the detail in from there. So several different ways of using this that will allow you to either record stuff as it comes in or plan it in advance and track the due dates. Of course, at the top of the project form, we have links to the reservation viewer and the program viewer. This one, of course, shows us a list of all the reservations for this project, and the other a list of all the programs for this project. We've already looked at the project form that shows all the detail on a single project. Now let's take a look at the project viewer where we can see a list of all of our projects at once. It's just like the reservation viewer, but has a little more information. When it first loads, it defaults to showing only the active projects. Notice here the status criteria set to active. So we're seeing a list of all the active projects that we have. Let's look at what some of the data is that is shown in each project record here. There's the project ID and of course the title, the status of the project, the subject of the project, the default length of programs in the project. We have a checkbox that would tell us if it's a series. All of this information, of course, is coming from the project form. Variable length check, adult check mark, filler check mark, the production type, production origin, who the owner of the copyright is, the name of the producer, and then on the third line, the start date, planned end date, a close date if it's been filled in. Here is some calculated data, the number of times the project has been scheduled to play, any program in the project. Total of 4 plays have been scheduled for this project. And of course that comes from the channel schedule, which we'll be seeing a little later. So that's calculated for us. Here is the first scheduled play date of any program in this project, and then the last scheduled play date and time of any program in this project. And then finally, the signal source. If we move over to the right-hand side of the form, for each project we see the program numbers, the same ones we saw at the top of the program list on the project form. The total, number received, number available, and number due. Again, the total being all completed or planned programs that are entered in the list. Received have been turned in, available are still in the library and can be shown, and due would indicate any that should have been turned in but have not been, that are past due. So a lot of detail information. And then, of course, the link button to take us to the project form to see any other information we want about that project. So that's the data. Let's go up to the top of the form now and look at the criteria that we can use to filter the data. You can search by title very quickly, and that's actually a search for any word in the title. So we can put, for example, religion, and see each program, or excuse me, each project that has the word religion anywhere in the title. Let's try action. And there's our one project that has the word action. We'll clear that criteria. We're back to all active. So we have criteria for subject. We can check any of the flags. You'll notice they're gray because when we say no, in other words, if it's blank, that's a criteria too. What we're saying here when this check mark is white is we're saying not adult. If it's checked, then we would see only adult. There aren't any. And the third possibility is that it's gray, meaning it isn't yes or no. It doesn't make any difference if it's adult or not. So all three of these check boxes actually have three choices. We don't care, it's gray, or check for yes, blank for no. Production type, origin, owner, and the default program length, and here we have a longest and shortest. So we could say all programs that are more than 29 minutes and less than 60 minutes. Other criteria, again, on the left, the producer, and that would be a selected person. There is a link button to take us to the person form if we have selected a producer. The organization, so we can see all projects for one organization. There they are. Always the X button clears the criteria. Project start and end dates. That tells us this is the project start earliest and latest dates. So in other words, we could say all the projects that have started during the first 6 months of this year by putting the first date of the year and then say June 31st, we would be saying all projects that have started during the first half of the year. On the last row of criteria is the number of plays. That's total plays of different programs in the project, all the programs. So we could say, show me only projects that have played more than 10 times, or less than 20 times, or from 50 to 100 times. Any way you want. This is very useful for finding the projects perhaps that have not gotten their full amount of airtime, or maybe have been played too many times and should be closed. Powerful analysis. Same thing with scheduled dates. We can see all the projects that have been scheduled to play for the first time during a month. This is very important because this is your premiere. In other words, it's always an important thing to be able to report all the new projects that have shown for the first time this month or year or week. And by filling in these date range for first scheduled, we can do that. Same thing here with last scheduled airplay. We can say, show me all the projects that do not have any program scheduled past this date. So by combining any of these criteria, and in any of the viewer forms, of course, you can use as many of the criteria as you want at the same time to narrow down your choices and see exactly what you have, a powerful way of analyzing your data. After you've selected your list, again, as we had on the reservation viewer, we have some command buttons over on the right. Two of them you've seen before. One is the mailing list, and the other is report. So here quickly is a report that shows us the information about selected projects. And you'll notice at the top of the report it says status active. That's the criteria that this list was selected by. If I fill in 6 or 7 different criteria, they're all listed here in the subtitle of the report so that you know you're looking at a list of active projects that have played less than this many times, the first air date was, the subject is, and so on. So it completely repeats the criteria you've set, giving you very powerful reporting mechanism. You can print that out. And what you're seeing here basically is the same information that was displayed on the form, plus the description and notes about the project. We'll close the report, and of course, again, you can print any report, all of it, or single pages, or just read it on the screen. The next command button we can look at over on the right is a mailing list, and this is going to give us a mailing list of all the producers of the selected projects. So again, very quickly we could say all the active projects that have a subject of religion and do a mailing to all the producers of those projects. Powerful tool. The new button that you have not seen before is the program schedule. This will show us the actual program schedule every time any program in the project is to air for whatever project we have selected here. We'll look at the program schedule itself a little later, but this link button would give us that capability of seeing the programs and exactly when they're scheduled. Well, we've looked at projects, and now we're going to look at programs, and let me refresh you a little on what the relationship is between projects and programs. A project is a way of grouping together a bunch of reservations so that we know what work has been done. It may produce a program as a result of that work. It may produce a whole series of programs, or it may produce no programs. It could be a training project, as we've said, or a community outreach project. But programs are those individual units of video that can be shown, whether they're coming from the studio or a satellite, whether they're on tape or computer generated. All the programs are assigned to projects so that they can be grouped together. So a project is more than one thing. It's a unit of work, a group of work, but a program is our traditional piece of video, and every program is part of a project. A project may mean producing one big program. Maybe it's a 3-hour live field show, and that's the only program that will be produced as part of that project. Or a project may be something that goes on every Friday afternoon for years and produces hundreds of programs. Whichever it is, the programs are part of the project. And in the project, we predefined a lot of the description about the program in those program defaults. We define what we expect the subject of the programs to be, how long we expect them to be, what the normal production type is for the programs that are part of that project. Now we'll go to the actual individual program detail. So if we look at the program form, we'll take it from the main menu, program form, and we'll get a bigger look at that. It starts off with the title, information about the project, and here, of course, is the link that tells us that this program is part of this project. Okay, let's actually go to a couple of others here and take a look at them. I'm just stepping through. Now here's an example. The project is softball action, and this particular program is softball action, summer 99, week 3. So the individual program, part of the project. Here's the important information that tells us whether we can use this program, what stage it's in. The status, and the status of available and production are built into Facil. You can add other statuses. Available meaning the program is ready to use, whether that means there's a tape in the library or it means that it's ready to be fed from the studio at the scheduled time in a live format. Whatever it is, the program is available and ready to go. Production meaning, of course, that the program is in work. It isn't done yet. After the program is done, you may return the tape, in which case you might want to call the status no recording or returned. If you did a live program and didn't record it. All of these, again, are user-defined so that you can control how you keep track of things. The due date and receive date, we have seen those actually already in the program list. A program may not even bother having a due date. If someone walks in with a tape and it's finished and you're going to receive it, you would put a receive date. It never had a due date. That's perfectly fine. But every program has either a due date or a receive date or both. Episode number, this is optional. Of course, if there's only going to be one program in the project, you would probably skip that. The earliest and latest play dates, those are dates, and of course we would use the calendar to pick those, are there to help you with scheduling, telling you that whatever date you put in here, we should not show the program before that date, and whatever date you put in for latest, we should not show the program after that date. When you do your scheduling, if you try and schedule outside of this specification, you'll get a warning. Again, this is completely optional for you. If we take a little bigger look at the form, we'll see that on the left we started with the project. Of course, we have a producer. When we create the programs, we generally do not fill any of this in because it all comes from the project definition. Only if the producer is different than it normally is for that project would we have to select a producer. Further down, we have the description, and this is an individual description for the program. We already see here we have a description for the project, but every program can have its own further description. All of these fields match the program default fields that we've already filled in on the project form. The subject, length, variable length checkbox, adult, filler, production type, origin, and owner. To illustrate this, I'm going to start a new program record from here, save the changes I made, completely blank. We don't know what project this program is part of. I'm going to start with that, selecting the project. I get my project notices, if there are any, and you see that all this information has filled in automatically. It was all copied from the project record. Now, only if it is a different producer for this one program would I need to change this. The description, copied from the project. Again, if I want a different description for this one program, I would change it. If the length is not what was expected, I would change it. Subject, and so on and so forth, all the way through. As long as it follows what we expected for the project, it's all filled in automatically. Any differences, we set those now by making little edits. And of course, we do want to fill in the status and receive date, which would be today. If we want to fill in episode number, earliest play, and so on. But basically, just by selecting the project, we have a program record. Of course, it's automatically assigned a unique ID number. Now, one very important thing is the signal source. Let's show you a little bit of the flexibility that's built into Facil. If we go down here a little bit and take a closer look at the signal source, next to it you see we have a tape number, and right here, starts at. Okay. If I select a different signal source, let's say satellite, the tape number in starts at goes away, and it's replaced by a text field called source details. If I go back to tape as the signal source, we're back to tape number and starts at, because tape number and starts at are only associated with tapes. Any other signal source, whether it's predefined or one that you define, there's the text field for you to fill in the details. Since tape is the most common signal source that we still use, let's take a look at some of the details here. If I have a tape already existing, I can simply select it from my list of tapes and enter it here. Or I can create a new tape. Now, it's important to understand that the program and the tape are two separate things in Facil. The reason it's done that way is because it is possible to have multiple programs on the same tape. Take, for example, a series of promos. They're each 2 minutes long. They're on different subjects, different titles, and so on, but you have 10 of them on the same tape. So by separating the program record from the actual tape record, we allow for that. We allow for multiple programs on the same tape. The starts at, hours, minutes, and seconds, of course, will tell us if there are multiple programs on the tape, where on the tape this particular program starts. And finally, all the way over on the right, we see a box that tells us about the tape, where it's located, status, and format. While you're looking at that, I'll back up to an existing tape, and you'll be able to see that information. Just back up a little, and there we go. Okay, so here you see that this particular program is on tape 43, which we've selected here, and here it tells us that tape 43 is in the library, its status is available, and what format it is. If I want to see that tape record or edit any of this information, I would just push the link button next to the tape number, and here's the tape record, and we can fill in or change the information about the different tapes that are in our library, numbers, formats, capacity, the date it was received, status, location, and then a title. We can also see a program list. If there are multiple programs on the same tape, we can click this button and see a list of all the programs that are on the tape. I'll close the tape form, Go back to our program form. So we see here we can track. Now, because the most common situation is that you get a new program and it's on its own tape, we've provided a shortcut for that. That's the little yellow plus, and that will start a new tape record and fill it in for you so that you can create the program and tape record as easily as possible in the minimum number of steps. We looked at the program data in its the program form, seeing one program record at a time. And now we'll look at the related program viewer that shows us our list of all programs. We'll just click on Program View from the main menu. And by default, the viewer comes up with the criteria of showing all programs that have a status of available. You're familiar with the viewer concept by now. The reservation viewer, the project viewer, and now the program viewer all work very much in the same way. The information shown for each program, this is each individual piece of video that we're prepared to show, is very similar to the project information, showing the project first, then the program, and of course the project title and program title may be different, the program status, the program subject, then on the second line, from the left, we have the finished length of the program, the variable, adult, and filler flags. You see those, a couple of those are checked here for this program. What type of production it is. This is done with character generator. The signal source is computer. The origin of the program is internal, owner internal, and the producer, Dave Becker. The link button here would take us to the program form showing all the details of this program. And then finally on the third line of the program data, the date it was received, the earliest and latest play dates. This one has an earliest and no latest filled in. Again, calculated from the program schedule, the number of times this particular program has played, the first time it played, the last date and time that it played, and if there were tape number and notes, we would see that also. Here we see some tape numbers. So all the information about the program, if we go to the top of the form and look at the criteria, again, very similar to the project, we can say, show me only the programs that are in a project. So if we pick softball action, here are all the episodes of softball action that have a status of available. If we clear the available status, we may see a little longer list. Again, if we look a little bit over to the right, we'll see the subject criteria, and right below it tells us how many records we're looking at. Let's turn the status on and off and see if it affects the, there you go, we have 2 programs in production status and 16 in available status, again for the project that we've already picked, which was softball action. So status criteria, subject criteria, again going to the left, program length criteria, so we can find all the programs that are between 2950 and 3000 in length. Our 3 flags, again with the 3 states, gray for no choice, or only yes or only no for variable, adult, and filler. The production type, the number found, as we discussed. On the third line, the origin, owner, producer, a link to the producer's person form, date received, starting and ending criteria for date received, tape number, so this would show us all the programs on one tape if there were multiple programs on the tape, and then relating to scheduling, how many times the program is played. Again, this is the individual program, the first date it was scheduled, the last date it was scheduled, start and end criteria for all of that. So a very powerful set of criteria, again, allowing us to find whatever programs we want. Command buttons here, just like on the project, this would show us the producers, give us a mailing list of the producers. This gives us a report of the displayed programs, and the one in the middle is the schedule that would show us when whichever program is currently selected is scheduled. So that's our program viewer. Again, very similar from the program viewer to the project viewer, but the project is used to track the overall sets of programs or series of programs, and here we're dealing with the individual finished video productions. We've looked at the people in Facil, the projects, the equipment reservations, the classes to train them to use that equipment. What we want to end up with, of course, are programs that we can show to the world. So Facil has a complete program scheduling mechanism. You can schedule any number of channels second by second with programming of any length, whether it's a 5-second ID or a 4-hour satellite feed. Putting those programs into your schedule as far into the future as you wish, and maintaining an accurate and complete schedule of programming that can then be used to produce printed program schedules as well. Let's take a look at the program schedule, selected here from the main menu. It's a fairly large form, and by default, the program schedule comes up showing the current day's programming on whatever channel you set as your default channel. Again, you can have as many different channels as you wish. The top of the form contains several criteria here, the main ones being the channel and the start and end date time that you want to see. Again, it's showing us a 24-hour period right now. Actually, I think it's a 48-hour period, but it could be showing any length that you want, one day at a time or more. Also, we have the ability here to show only program times that are in different status, whether it's been filled with a program or the time is empty. To start with, let's look at the record itself. And as you see, of course, this is a list of events that take place on this channel. And basically, we have a start date and time, a length. The next one, of course, starts where the previous one ended, in this case at 1 a.m. Here we have a program ending at that's odd length, 59:36. So the next event starts at that time, 56, starts at that time, and the length of that program includes that few odd seconds. So every second is accounted for. They're in chronological order, each one starting where the previous one ended, and listing both the project and a little further to the right, the program that's filling that event, that time space. The line in yellow represents what we call a project hold. In other words, the project has been scheduled, but as you see, the program is blank. Because we're scheduling far in advance, we want the ability to schedule the time slots for our projects before the programs are completed, perhaps before they're received. By doing it with this project hold mechanism, we can see exactly where every project will be shown, and then of course the actual program ID and program title can be filled in as you get closer to the air date. Going back to the form, we see there are link buttons both for the project and for the program that will take us directly to the project or program forms and give us all the detailed information about that entry. Okay, going back again to the top, now we know how this works, that we have open spaces, we have filled spaces, and then we have our project hold where the project is scheduled but the program has not been filled in. By checking and unchecking these boxes, we'll turn off open and full. Now we're looking at only the project hold. So quickly we can see, okay, these are the ones that we need to fill in the specific program information. Or conversely, we could go back and say, show me just the open times. And there's our one open time. It's only 2 seconds long. Maybe we would fill that in with an ID. So we can very quickly find what we're looking for here. We'll turn it all back on, so we're looking at the complete schedule again in chronological order. The last two criteria here to the left a little bit are a project, selecting for a project ID, and of course it uses the project search form to find the one you're looking for, and or a specific program ID. So by filling these in, of course, we would see all the schedule events for any one project or any one program. And again, we can open up the time and see them over any period of time. Just a very quick example of that. Let's take this project, the Hidden Truce. I'll just fill in the ID since I'm looking at the number. I know the number. I'll just do it that way because it's a little quicker. But I'm only looking at this date range. Let's turn off the date limit. And now we're seeing every event scheduled for the Hidden Truce. And it tells us how many there are, 128. So that's simply the way to view the program schedule. Now, of course, you want to know, how do we put things into the program schedule? There are actually 3 different ways of editing the program schedule. We can edit one event at a time, putting programs in individually, deleting them, changing them. We can use a block method, which means that we can take a block of programming and copy it to another date or even another channel, or move a block of programming of any length with any number of events in it from one place to another, date or channel. The third way of adding programs to your schedule is using the auto scheduler, which is used to create entries for repeating patterns of events. In other words, to show the same program or a series of programs every Friday at 2 o'clock for so many weeks. That's actually probably the most common and powerful way of entering the programs. But let's start by looking on our program schedule form, just as we were, and seeing how we can edit individual time spaces in the program form. Here's our program schedule for this date and channel. And we can see that we have mostly project holds where the program has not been filled in yet. And then we have quite a few empty spaces. Here's one that's 6 hours long, one that's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and so on. Let's start by taking the first record here, where we have a project entered but no program. On the upper right corner of the form, there are 2 buttons, Edit and Block. Edit is to change one individual time space, and Block is to do the moving and copying of groups of programming, as I mentioned. All right, so let's do the edit. Let's back up the shot so we can see the whole form. We'll zoom out a little bit. And you'll notice at the bottom of the form, when I click the Edit button, the Edit Information panel appears. We do it this way so that you can see as much information as possible on the screen while you're looking at the list, and then when you're ready to change it, we'll let you see this edit form so that you can change whatever information you want on the record you're looking at. So we've already selected the record just by putting the cursor on it, and when we look down in the edit form, we can zoom in now, we'll see the program ID, project ID, the start and end time of this program, and the start and end time of the space that the program is in. Now, those are going to be the same, of course, after the program is inserted. But if you were working with a larger space, you might have a large space here and be working with a shorter program, start and end, and you would actually be able to move the program around, of course, as to where it starts and ends within the open space. But since this is all filled in already, we've got the project, we know the length is 2 hours, and if we pan to the right just a little bit, we'll see that the form always shows us the project length, the length of the event that we've scheduled, the length of the space we're working in. The program length right now is blank, of course, because we haven't selected a program. So that's all we have to do. We just want to select a program. We move back over to the program ID. When we click, because the project is already filled in, we're going to see a list of programs, but only the programs that are in that project. And here we see that there are 3 programs in that project. This, of course, is the program viewer form now being used to select a program for scheduling. You can see the little change in the title here, so we know what we're doing. But it has all the same capabilities as far as the criteria. But what's happened, because we've already picked the project, is that the project ID criteria is filled in. Because we're working in a 2-hour space, the length criteria has been filled in. And the status available is a default, because we assume we're only going to schedule available programs. But you can change any of these criteria to find any program you want when selecting for the schedule. Okay, we'll just pick one of these programs, let's say this one in the middle. We can see that it is exactly 2 hours long, it's finished length. And at the bottom of the form is a button, Select for Schedule. So once we've picked the one we want, we just click Select for Schedule, it fills it in. Now we have our episode number here, our program length, and by picking the program, all we do now, of course, is save, and we'll see right up here at the top, at our top record is the one we're filling in. We'll just say save, and it changes to the gray color indicating that it's filled. Here's our program information, and we've put the program into the slot. So the explanation was a little long, but the process is actually quite simple. We pick the record we want, Here's the project, Faith in Motion. We click on the program selector. Here's a list of all the finished programs in Faith in Motion. We pick the one we want. We click Select for Schedule. It fills it in here. Now you notice this is 50 minutes long. Save. And again, it's entered right here. Let's take a open space. This one's half an hour long. I can just click anywhere on the line to select that one. Here it's showing me that it's half an hour long. There's no project or program. We'll go to Project. We're going to see a list of all the projects that have a default length of a half an hour or less. Those are the ones that'll fit. And I'll pick this one, Wyatt's Project. Select for Schedule. And it's entered right here. We'll click Save. And now we have Wyatt's Project scheduled in that space. And that's a project hold right here. We have not selected the program yet. So you can go straight to the program, or you can just select the project for project hold. It's quite a simple system, as you see. If you put a program in the middle of a larger empty space, then of course what happens is that the empty space is broken up. You still have remaining space before and after. Last couple of nice features on the program schedule that I'd like you to see deal with variable length programs, and also a mechanism that we have for flagging special situations in the schedule. We'll go back again to the program schedule form. And on this date, we can see that things are pretty well filled in. Almost all the programs have been filled in. There's a couple of project holds. If we pan over to the right edge of the form, we see that at the very right end there are 3 columns marked A, V, and F, and those are flags that indicate adult programs, variable length programs, and filler programs. And of course that information comes from your entering the program information. You'll recall there were 3 checkboxes for adult, variable, and filler. Now the variable, of course, is particularly important because that allows us to fill in the odd spaces. Here, for example, if we look at this record, we're showing the program guide, which would be a typical variable length program. Of course, that's a character generator crawl that shows the program guide, and we can show it for any length of time we want. If we pan to the left side of the form, we can see that in this case, we're showing 44 seconds of the program guide. If we look down just a little bit further, here we see we're showing 30 seconds of the program guide. Here's another one, 13 seconds. So that's a typical use of a variable length program to fill in odd spaces. If we go again, pan to the right, we see that those 3 entries are all flagged variable. If we put a program in that is of adult content, there'll be a nice scarlet A right here to warn us which programs are adult, again, avoiding the problem of inadvertently scheduling adult content during the day. Every time you schedule an adult content program, there is a warning message as well. And then, of course, the filler, just to help us locate those programs that we put in to take up space, the ones that you show over and over again, in case you want to replace it or take advantage of reusing that space for some better programming. You may put in filler to start with and then go back and replace the filler with some new programming that's come in. So by flagging those 3 special cases, again, makes it a little easier for you to use the schedule. In addition to editing individual events in the program schedule, we also provide a way of dealing with a block of programming, defined as any list of events from one point in time to another point on the same channel, a continuous list. So in other words, 4 hours of programming from this date or 2 hours of programming from that date. As long as it's a continuous block, you can move that block, you can copy that block, and then we also have a way of deleting groups of programs at one time. So we'll start with the move and copy, the block operations. Moving, of course, means you take it out of the schedule from one place and put it in a new place. Copying obviously leaves it in the original place and adds it to the new place. So you could repeat the same block of programming. Okay, on the form itself, in the upper right corner, we started with the edit button, and now we have a block button, and we have a delete button. Okay, we're going to look at the block operations first. Let's look at the whole form again. I'll hit the block button, and at the bottom of the form, instead of the edit panel, now we get the block panel. It's a fairly simple concept. There are 3 steps. We set the block, which is the first line. In other words, we define the block of programming, where it starts and where it ends. The second thing we do is set a target where we want it to go, where we're going to copy it or move it to. And then the third step is to either click the button to copy it or click the button to move it. So set the block, set the target, and copy or move. So we can pick any event as the start of the block, any event as the end of the block, and it can be as long as you want. It could cover several days. It could have hundreds of events in it. Let's look at how we execute that on the form. I selected this event to be the start of my block, and I click the button that says Start, and it fills in the channel, which obviously is the channel we're looking at, and the start time of that first event. Now I select the last event I want, click the End button, and it fills in the end. And here is the time. You notice it's 168 hours, because there's a lot of big empty blocks in our schedule right now. But it tells us exactly what's going on, and our block is defined. Okay, if I want to see that more clearly, this link button resets the viewer, so it shows me the block, start, end. So now I'm looking exactly at the block that I just set, ready to go. Now I pick a target space, and all I need are 2 things, channel, and it can be the same channel or a different channel. I'll pick a different channel, and I'll pick a date, and I'm going to pick a date way into the future so I know I don't run into any conflicts. If any part of the target space you're going for has something in it, you cannot do this. Okay, Facil will not overwrite existing scheduling with a block that you're copying or moving. You can only copy or move to a completely empty space. If necessary, go to the space first and empty it out if that's what you want to do. Okay, so by using the calendar, I've picked my channel, I pick my start date and time, which can be completely different, and the end date and time of the target is filled in automatically because obviously that's how long the block is. Oh, and here's a message, target not available. So that's warning me that in fact there is something already scheduled there. I could see that if I wanted to. Click the link. Sure enough, there's 2 programs already in that target block. Okay, I'll go back. I'm looking at the original block I set again, and I'll pick a better date. Let's go to the year 2006. That ought to work for us. Yes, the target is available. Now I just click copy block to target, and it's done. And this looks like the same list, except if I check the dates, here these dates are in the year 2006. So this is my copied block in its new place. So it's that easy to copy a block. If I go back to the original block that I defined, same list, but here we're in the year 2002. That's the block I defined. That means I could copy the block again. So I could pick another date and another date and another date and copy, copy, copy. If at any point I move the block, then of course it's gone from the original place that it was in the schedule, and we would have an empty place instead.